William's hands trembled as he watched the bridge crack beneath the little girl's feet. 8-year-old Olivia screamed as concrete chunks plummeted into the ravine below. He had 30 seconds, maybe less, before the entire section collapsed. Behind him, tourists ran for safety, but the homeless 14-year-old did something nobody expected. He sprinted toward the danger instead. His stomach was empty, his clothes were torn, and he had nothing to lose. But as his fingers reached for Olivia's outstretched hand, William heard something that made his blood freeze. The section of bridge beneath his own feet began to crack. Welcome to Hell's Angels family. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now because this story will touch your heart in ways you won't expect. To my faithful subscribers who've been here from the beginning, may God continue to bless you abundantly. Before we dive in, let's lift this moment up in prayer. Heavenly Father, I come before you asking for your divine protection over everyone watching right now. Bless their families, Lord. Heal their bodies, provide for their needs, and give them peace that surpasses all understanding. Surround them with your favor and let your presence be felt in their lives today. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Now, what you're about to witness isn't just a story about heroism. It's about a homeless 14-year-old boy who risked everything to save an 8-year-old girl from a collapsing bridge, only to be framed for the very crime he tried to stop, and how 700 bikers became the family he never knew he needed. William's fingers closed around the cold metal railing as the concrete beneath Olivia's feet cracked apart like a spiderweb spreading across glass. The 8-year-old's scream cut through the morning fog, and for a heartbeat, every rational thought in William's mind screamed at him to run the other way. This was Lucas's daughter, the same Lucas whose Hell's Angels crew had kicked him unconscious behind their Tenderloin clubhouse just 4 weeks ago, leaving him with 2 cracked ribs and a warning to never come near their territory again. The same man who'd laughed while his bikers threw William's only blanket into a dumpster fire. Every survival instinct William had developed in 6 months on San Francisco's streets told him to let karma do its work. But his legs were already moving. The bridge groaned, a deep metallic sound that made tourists scatter in every direction. Olivia stumbled backward as another chunk of concrete plummeted into the bay below, her pink jacket flapping in the wind like a flag of distress. She was 30 feet from the safe section, standing on a bridge segment that was disintegrating by the second. William's worn sneakers pounded against the pavement as he sprinted past a businessman who'd frozen in panic, past a mother clutching her stroller, past every reasonable person fleeing towards safety. The chemical smell hit him again, that same industrial acid residue he'd noticed earlier, sharp and acrid in his nostrils. Someone had done this deliberately, and whoever it was had timed it perfectly for maximum carnage during the sunrise rush, when hundreds of tourists crowded the walkway for their Golden Gate Bridge photos. "Don't move," William shouted at Olivia, but his voice cracked from dehydration and came out barely louder than a whisper. She couldn't hear him over the chaos, the screaming tourists, the groaning metal, the horrible cracking sounds as more concrete gave way. Behind her, Lucas was running too, his phone forgotten on the ground, his face twisted in horror as he watched his daughter teeter on the edge of a 20-foot gap that had just opened up. But Lucas was too far away, at least 50 yards back. He'd never make it in time. William's lungs burned as he pushed harder, his empty stomach cramping with each stride. 3 days without food had left him weak and dizzy, but adrenaline was a powerful thing. It made starving 14-year-olds do impossible things. The section beneath William's feet trembled, and he felt the vibration travel up through his legs into his chest. He had maybe 10 seconds before this entire pedestrian walkway collapsed into the bay. Maybe less. Olivia's eyes locked onto his, wide with terror and confusion, and something inside William's chest cracked open. She was just a kid. Whatever her father had done, whatever pain Lucas had caused him, whatever scars those bikers had left on his ribs and his soul, none of that was her fault. This little girl in her pink jacket with cartoon characters on it had never hurt anyone. William launched himself forward as the concrete began its final surrender to gravity. chunks breaking off and tumbling down into the churning water below. His hand shot out, fingers wrapping around Olivia's wrist just as the ground disappeared beneath her. The momentum nearly pulled him over the edge with her. William's shoulder slammed into the twisted railing, pain exploding through his already injured ribs like someone had stabbed him with hot knives. For a horrifying moment, they both dangled over the bay, William's other hand clinging to a section of railing that was bending under their combined weight. He could feel the metal giving way, the bolts popping loose one by one. Below them, chunks of bridge crashed into the water with sounds like thunder, sending up massive sprays that soaked them both. The cold shocked William's system, but he refused to let go. Olivia was screaming his name even though she didn't know it, just screaming, help me, please. Her weight dragged him closer to the edge, inch by inch. His fingers were slipping. His malnourished body was giving out. This was it. He'd saved her from the initial fall, but now they were both going to die together. Then hands grabbed his jacket from behind. Strong hands. Multiple sets of them. William felt himself being yanked backward with enough force to knock the wind out of his lungs. He refused to let go of Olivia even as whoever was behind him dragged them both onto solid ground with such force that William's knees scraped across the rough concrete. They collapsed in a heap on the safe section of the bridge, William's body finally giving out completely. His vision blurred. His chest heaved. Olivia clung to him, sobbing into his torn jacket, her small body shaking so hard William thought she might fall apart. He wrapped his arms around her instinctively, the way he wished someone had held him when he was scared and alone. For a moment, everything else faded. The pain, the fear, the confused tourists staring at them, the growing crowd of onlookers with phones out recording everything. The rumble of motorcycles filled the air before William could catch his breath. Hundreds of them. The sound rolled through the morning like approaching thunder, and William's blood went cold despite his racing heart. He knew that sound. He'd heard it in his nightmares for 4 weeks straight. Through blurred vision, he watched as 700 Hells Angels bikers flooded onto the bridge, their engines cutting off in synchronized silence that was somehow more terrifying than the roar. They'd been on their way to some event, William realized, probably their annual Bay Area rally, and had witnessed everything from the approach. Lucas pushed through the crowd, his massive frame cutting through the sea of leather jackets like a ship through water. His face was unreadable, his jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists. The other bikers formed a circle around them, blocking out the sun. William tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. They felt like water. This was the moment. This was where Lucas would finish what his crew started last month. This was where William would pay for every perceived insult, for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, for existing. Olivia refused to let go of William, her small arms wrapped around his neck, so tight he could barely breathe. "Daddy, he saved me," she sobbed, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "The bridge was falling, and he saved me. He saved me, Daddy." Lucas dropped to one knee in front of William, and the 14-year-old flinched despite himself, his body tensing for the blow he knew was coming. Instead, Lucas's eyes were wet. The massive biker who'd ordered his beating just weeks ago, who'd stood there smoking a cigarette while his crew left William bleeding in an alley, was crying, actual tears running down his tattooed face. The crowd of leather-clad bikers watched in complete silence as their leader reached out slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal, and placed a hand on William's shoulder. Not rough, not violent, gentle, almost reverent, like William was made of something precious and breakable. Most people never see the moment their life changes forever. Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next. Drop a comment where you're watching from. Lucas opened his mouth to speak, his voice thick with emotion, but before any words could come out, someone shoved through the circle of bikers with authority that made even the largest men step aside. San Francisco police. Nobody move. A female officer with sharp features and a detective's badge pushed her way to the center, flanked by 2 uniformed cops with hands on their weapons. Detective Torres, her badge red. She looked at the collapsed bridge section, at the gathered bikers, then at William with an expression that made his stomach drop. Not gratitude, not relief, not the look you'd give someone who just risked their life to save a child. Something else entirely. Something cold and calculated and wrong. She pulled out her phone, swiped through something with deliberate slowness, then turned the screen toward the crowd like she was revealing a winning hand. We've been investigating structural damage to this bridge since early this morning, Torres announced, her voice carrying over the stunned silence. Security footage from 3 a.m. shows someone matching this boy's exact description near the support beams with containers of industrial acid. William's entire body went numb. The words didn't make sense at first. They bounced off his brain like he was hearing a foreign language. What? Lucas stood up slowly, his expression darkening, his earlier emotion replaced with something harder. That's impossible. This kid just risked his life. Torres cut him off with a raised hand. The footage doesn't lie, Mr. Rodriguez. We have clear video of him sabotaging the bridge supports 3 hours before the collapse. Premeditated destruction of public property resulting in endangerment of civilian lives. She grabbed William's arm, yanking him away from Olivia despite the little girl's screams. Olivia reached for him, crying, "No, no, he saved me." But one of the uniformed officers held her back gently. The bikers shifted, a collective movement like a wave, hands moving to weapons hidden in jackets and boots. But Torres's backup had already arrived. 6 more squad cars, lights flashing red and blue, officers pouring out with tactical vests and serious expressions. William's mind was spinning so fast he thought he might vomit. He'd been framed. Someone had set him up perfectly. Someone who knew he'd be here this morning, who knew what he looked like, who had access to security systems and dangerous chemicals. Someone who wanted Olivia dead and needed a convenient scapegoat. A homeless kid nobody would believe, nobody would defend. "Wait," Lucas said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made even armed police officers hesitate. "Let me see that footage." Torres's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching near her eye, but she held out her phone. Lucas studied it for a long moment, his face like stone, impossible to read. William could see the screen from where Torres had him restrained, her fingers digging into his arm hard enough to bruise. The footage was damning. A figure in a torn jacket identical to his, same build, same height, face obscured by a hood, carefully applying something to the bridge supports in the dead of night when the walkway was empty. It looked exactly like him. The way the figure moved, the slight limp from an old injury, even the nervous way the person kept looking over their shoulder. Whoever had done this had studied him extensively, copied his clothes, his build, his mannerisms, his movements. They'd created a perfect replica. Lucas looked from the phone to William, and something passed across his face. Not certainty, not trust, not belief in William's innocence, but doubt about the official story, about the timing, about how convenient it was that the supposed saboteur just happened to be the same person who saved his daughter. Still, Torres wasn't interested in doubt or questions or investigations that went deeper than the surface. She yanked William's arms behind his back roughly, metal handcuffs clicking into place so tight they cut into his wrists. William, no last name on file, age 14, currently homeless. Torres recited like she'd memorized every detail about him. "You're under arrest for bridge sabotage, attempted murder, and destruction of federal property. We have video evidence." The interrogation room smelled like stale coffee and fear. William's handcuffs bit into his wrists as he sat across from Detective Torres, who kept replaying the security footage on a laptop positioned so he couldn't look away. The figure in the video moved exactly like him. That slight drag of his left foot from when a drunk driver clipped him 2 years ago, the way he hunched his shoulders against cold that wasn't there. It was perfect. Too perfect. William's throat was so dry he could barely speak. "That's not me," he croaked for the 7th time. "I was sleeping under the Presidio overpass at 3 a.m. There's a homeless camp there. People saw me." Torres leaned back in her chair with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We already checked. Your homeless friends have scattered. Can't find a single witness who'll confirm your alibi. Convenient." She tapped a pen against the table in a rhythm that made William's head pound. Here's what I think happened. You've been living rough for 6 months, angry at the world, angry at people like Lucas Rodriguez who have everything while you have nothing. You decided to hurt him where it counts, his daughter, but you got cold feet at the last second and played hero to cover your tracks. William shook his head so hard it made him dizzy. Why would I save her if I wanted to hurt her? That doesn't make sense. Torres shrugged like his logic was irrelevant. Guilt. Panic. Who knows how a 14-year-old's mind works? The evidence speaks for itself. She stood up, closing the laptop with a decisive snap. You're looking at 20 years minimum, tried as an adult. Federal terrorism charges for infrastructure sabotage. Unless you confess now and tell me who helped you. William's hands trembled. 20 years. He'd be 34 before he saw daylight again. His entire life erased because someone had decided he made the perfect scapegoat. The door burst open before he could respond. A man in an expensive suit walked in like he owned the room. Salt and pepper hair, sharp eyes, leather briefcase that probably cost more than William had seen in his entire life. My client will not be answering any further questions, the lawyer announced. Torres's face flushed red. Who the hell are you? The man handed her a business card with practiced ease. Marcus Chun, attorney at law. I've been retained to represent William. I'm also here to inform you that Mr. Rodriguez has posted bail, and unless you have charges beyond the circumstantial video evidence, my client is leaving. Torres stood so fast her chair scraped across the floor. Bail? For a homeless kid with no fixed address and flight risk written all over him? No judge would. Marcus smiled coldly. Judge Morrison already did. 1 hour ago. William will be staying with the Rodriguez family under house supervision pending trial. Now remove those handcuffs before I file a complaint about wrist contusions on a minor. 20 minutes later, William sat in the back of Lucas's truck, still trying to process what had happened. The lawyer had disappeared after handing Lucas a folder of paperwork. Lucas drove in silence through San Francisco traffic, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Finally, as they merged onto the highway toward Oakland, Lucas spoke. I don't know if you did it or not. William's stomach dropped. I didn't. Lucas held up a hand. Let me finish. I don't know if you did it. But I know my daughter would be dead right now if you hadn't acted. That buys you the benefit of doubt and a roof over your head until we figure out what really happened. Don't make me regret it. The Hells Angels clubhouse in Oakland was nothing like William expected. Behind the intimidating exterior with bikes parked in rows like metal soldiers, the inside was almost comfortable. Worn leather couches, a kitchen that smelled like bacon, framed photos of rallies and brotherhood covering the walls. Olivia was waiting by the door. The second she saw William, she launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his waist. You came back, she whispered. Lucas placed a hand on his daughter's head gently. Olivia hasn't left the door since I dropped her off. Kept saying she needed to make sure you were okay. William didn't know what to say to that. Nobody had worried about him in years. Lucas led them to a back room where 3 other bikers were already reviewing security footage on multiple monitors. This is Tank, Reaper, and Bones, Lucas introduced without ceremony. They're helping me figure out who framed you. Tank, a massive man with a gray beard, looked up from a screen. We pulled footage from 4 different angles of that bridge. City cameras, traffic cams, even a tourist's Instagram live stream. The sabotage footage Torres showed you? It's been edited. Timestamp manipulation, digital insertion, the works. Professional job. William's legs nearly gave out. So you believe me? Reaper, younger with sleeve tattoos, nodded. Someone went through serious effort to pin this on you specifically. That means someone who knew you'd be at that bridge this morning. Someone who's been watching you. The word sent ice down William's spine. Someone had been following him, studying him, documenting his movements and mannerisms well enough to create a digital puppet that moved like him. For how long? Weeks? Months? Bones pulled up another screen showing the bridge supports. The acid used was industrial grade, military specification. Not something you buy at Home Depot. We're talking black market connections and serious money. Lucas crossed his arms, his expression dark. So we're looking for someone with resources, technical skills, and a reason to want my daughter dead while framing a homeless kid. The room fell silent as everyone processed the implications. Olivia had been sitting quietly on a chair, coloring in a book someone had given her, but suddenly she went completely still. Her crayon froze mid-stroke. People who don't subscribe miss the moment everything changes. Hit that button now before it's too late. Baby, what's wrong? Lucas asked, noticing immediately. Olivia's face had gone pale, her eyes wide with recognition as she stared at the screen showing the acid containers. Her voice came out small and scared. I've seen those bottles before. Every man in the room turned to look at her. Lucas knelt beside his daughter's chair, his voice carefully controlled. Where, Olivia? Where did you see them? Her hands started shaking, the crayon dropping to the floor. Last week, in the garage at Uncle Garrett's house. He had boxes of them. I asked what they were for, and he got really mad. He told me never to tell anyone I saw them, or something bad would happen to Daddy. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Lucas's face went from concern to stone cold in an instant. Tank and Reaper exchanged glances that William couldn't interpret. Bones whispered something that sounded like a curse. Olivia, Lucas said very slowly, very carefully, like he was defusing a bomb with words. Are you absolutely sure it was Uncle Garrett? She nodded, tears starting to stream down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Daddy. I didn't know it was important. I thought he was just cleaning stuff for his bike. But those bottles on the screen, they have the same orange labels with the skull picture. Lucas stood up, and William had never seen anyone look so dangerous while standing perfectly still. Tank, pull up Garrett's financials. Reaper, check his movements over the last week. Bones, I need locations of every property he has access to. The bikers moved immediately, fingers flying across keyboards. William felt like he was watching something fracture in real time. Who's Garrett? He asked quietly. Lucas's jaw clenched so hard William heard teeth grinding. My younger brother. Second in command of this chapter. The man I trust more than anyone except Olivia. William's stomach turned. A family betrayal. This wasn't just about framing a homeless kid anymore. Tank pulled up financial records that made him whistle low. Boss, you need to see this. Garrett's been moving money. Large amounts. Withdrawals of 5, 10, 15,000 over the past 6 months. Always cash. Always from different accounts. Lucas leaned over the screen, his expression growing darker with each line of data. That's club money. He's been embezzling from us. Reaper looked up from his monitor, his face grim. Gets worse. His phone pinged near the Golden Gate Bridge at 2:47 a.m. this morning, exactly 17 minutes before the sabotage footage timestamp. The pieces were falling into place like a nightmare puzzle. Garrett had stolen from the club, sabotaged the bridge to kill his own niece, framed William to create chaos, and planned to disappear while everyone was distracted by the tragedy and the arrest. It was calculated, cold-blooded, monstrous. Lucas pulled out his phone, dialing with shaking hands. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. He's not answering. Bones checked another screen. His bike's GPS transponder went offline 20 minutes ago, right after the news broke about William's arrest. Lucas's phone suddenly buzzed with a text message. He looked at the screen, and whatever color was left in his face drained completely. He held it up for the others to see. The message was from Garrett. 3 words that made William's blood run cold. Sorry, brother. Goodbye. Lucas's truck tore through Oakland streets at speeds that made William grip the door handle until his knuckles turned white and his fingernails dug into the worn leather. Behind them, 15 motorcycles followed in tight formation. Tank, Reaper, Bones, and 12 other Hell's Angels who'd responded to Lucas's emergency call within minutes of the text message appearing. The roar of their engines cut through the evening air like a war cry. Olivia was safe back at the clubhouse with Lucas's ex-wife Maria and 3 trusted members who'd sworn on their lives to protect her. Lucas had looked each man in the eye before leaving, and they'd understood the unspoken message. If anything happened to his daughter, they wouldn't live long enough to explain how. The goodbye text from Garrett had been traced to the East Oakland chapter house, a warehouse building near the port that served as storage and secondary meeting space for club business. If Garrett was stupid enough to go there, Lucas would find him. If Garrett was smart enough to run, Lucas would hunt him to the ends of the earth. There would be no forgiveness, no mercy, not for this. William watched Lucas's face in the dashboard lights. It was like watching stone crack under pressure, emotions warring beneath a surface that threatened to shatter at any moment. This wasn't just betrayal. This was the destruction of everything Lucas had believed about family and loyalty. Why would he do this? William asked quietly, breaking the tense silence that had settled over the truck like a suffocating blanket. His voice sounded small and uncertain. Lucas's jaw was so tight it looked like it might shatter, tendons standing out in his neck. Money. It's always money. The words came out flat, dead, like he'd killed something inside himself to say them. Tank's voice crackled over the radio system Lucas had rigged throughout the truck. Boss, we pulled Garrett's complete financial history. Called in some favors with a guy who works at Bank of America. He's in deep with the Scorpions. Real deep. William had heard of the Scorpions even in his short time on the streets, a rival gang that ran gambling operations and loan sharking throughout the Bay Area. Violent, ruthless, and completely unforgiving to debtors. People who borrowed from the Scorpions either paid with money or paid with blood. There was no third option. How deep? Lucas asked, though his tone suggested he already knew it was bad. Whatever number came back wouldn't be a surprise, just a confirmation of fears he'd been suppressing. $240,000, Tank replied, and William heard someone whistle in the background. Started 2 years ago with a poker game that went wrong. Been trying to dig himself out ever since, but the interest kept piling up. 20% compound monthly. He never had a chance. The number hung in the air like poison gas, suffocating and deadly. $250,000 in gambling debts. Enough to make a man desperate. Enough to make him betray his own blood. Enough to make him point a knife at the future and carve out whatever pieces he needed to survive. William's mind raced through the implications, connecting dots that formed a picture uglier than anything he'd imagined. Garrett had been embezzling from the club to pay off the Scorpions, but it hadn't been enough. The interest alone would have been $48,000 a month. Impossible to maintain. So he'd planned something bigger. Kill Olivia, frame William for the bridge sabotage, and use the chaos to disappear with whatever money he could grab in the confusion. Maybe there was life insurance on Lucas's family. Maybe Garrett had been skimming accounts for months and needed a distraction big enough that nobody would notice the missing funds until he was long gone. Cold. Calculated. Monstrous. William had spent 6 months on the streets seeing the worst of humanity. Addicts who'd sell their children for a fix. Pimps who beat teenagers half to death. Dealers who cut their product with poison and didn't care who died. But this was different. This was family destroying family. Brotherhood turning to ash. It made William's stomach turn in ways that random street violence never had. The warehouse came into view as they rounded the corner of a street lined with shipping containers and abandoned industrial equipment. It was a squat concrete building with barred windows and one rolling metal door, graffiti covering the walls in layers that told the history of territorial disputes and gang signs. Lucas killed the engine 2 blocks away, and the motorcycles went silent behind them with practiced precision. The sudden quiet was almost worse than the noise. Heavy with anticipation and violence waiting to be unleashed. The bikers dismounted with the efficiency of men who'd done this 1,000 times before, checking weapons and forming up without needing orders. These men had been brothers in arms for years, maybe decades. They moved like a single organism, each knowing their role instinctively. Lucas pulled a gun from under his seat, a Glock 19, William noticed, the kind police used. Checked the magazine with movements so practiced they were almost casual, and looked at William. You stay in the truck. Lock the doors. This isn't your fight. William shook his head, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. He framed me for trying to murder your daughter. He's the reason I was about to spend 20 years in prison for something I didn't do. He wanted me to be his scapegoat, the homeless kid nobody would believe or defend. This is exactly my fight. Something flickered in Lucas's eyes, respect, maybe, or recognition of a kindred stubbornness. Lucas studied him for a long moment, then reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a folding knife, flicking it open to check the blade before handing it to William handle first. Stay behind me. Don't be a hero. You've used up your hero quota for the year. William took the knife, feeling the weight of it in his palm. He'd never held a weapon with the intent to use it. The thought terrified him. But the alternative, sitting in the truck while others fought his battle, was worse. They approached the warehouse from three sides in a coordinated assault that spoke of military training and years of experience. Tank's group took the back entrance, moving like shadows between shipping containers. Reaper's team covered the side exit, spreading out to create a perimeter that nothing could slip through. Lucas led the front assault with William, Bones, and four others whose names William hadn't learned. Their footsteps were nearly silent despite the gravel parking lot. The rolling door was already partially open, lights spilling out into the darkening evening like an invitation. Too easy, William thought. Too obvious. This felt like a trap, like walking into a mouth that was waiting to close. Lucas must have thought the same thing because he signaled everyone to stop with a raised fist, the universal military gesture for halt. "Garrett," Lucas called out, his voice echoing off the warehouse walls and the shipping containers surrounding them. "It's over. Come out and we'll talk. I know about the debt. I know about the scorpions. We can figure this out." The words were conciliatory, but William heard the undercurrent of rage barely contained. This was a predator offering one last chance before the kill. Laughter came from inside. Not Garrett's voice, multiple voices. Mocking, cruel laughter that raised the hair on William's arms. Then Garrett stepped into the doorway, and William understood immediately why the goodbye text had been sent to this location. Garrett wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He was making a stand. Behind him, 12 bikers emerged from the shadows like ghosts materializing, all wearing Hell's Angels cuts, but with faces William didn't recognize from the clubhouse. Young faces, hungry faces, desperate faces. Men who'd been recruited to Garrett's side with promises of money or power or whatever lies he'd been selling. Betrayers recognizing another betrayer as their leader. "Talk," Garrett called back, his voice bitter and sharp as broken glass. "Now you want to talk, big brother? Where were the talks when I was drowning in debt? When I came to you begging for help 2 years ago, and you told me to handle my own mistakes? When you said real men don't cry about their problems, they solve them?" Lucas's expression flickered, surprise, then pain, then anger washing over his features like waves. "You never asked me for help. You never said a word about the scorpions. You never told me it was gambling debt. If I'd known." "If you'd known what?" Garrett interrupted, stepping further into the light. William could see him clearly now, younger than Lucas by maybe 5 years, similar features, but twisted by resentment and desperation. "You would have given me a lecture about responsibility? About how the club doesn't bail out idiots who can't control themselves. I dropped hints for months. But you were too busy playing king of the club to notice your own brother falling apart. So I found my own solution. The Scorpions offered me a deal. Help them eliminate some competition, create chaos in the Hells Angels leadership, and my debt disappears. All I had to do was make you look weak. Maybe make you lose something precious. Make you feel what I've been feeling." The words hit Lucas like physical blows, each one landing with visible impact. His face went pale, then flushed with rage. "Olivia? You were going to kill Olivia to settle a gambling debt? Your own niece? The little girl who draws you birthday cards and calls you her favorite uncle." The words came out strangled, like Lucas was choking on them. "She wasn't supposed to be there," Garrett shouted, and for the first time William heard genuine distress cracking through the bitterness. His hands shook as he gestured wildly. "The bridge collapse was supposed to happen during the evening commute, when I knew she'd be home safe. Just infrastructure damage, massive insurance fraud. Blame it on the homeless kid everyone ignores anyway. The city would pay out millions, the Scorpions would get their cut from the construction contracts they control, and I'd get my debt erased. Clean. Simple. Nobody I cared about gets hurt. But then your ex changed Olivia's schedule last minute for some school thing, and she was there during the morning walk instead. I tried to call it off, sent messages, tried to warn people, but the acid was already working on the supports. Everything went wrong. I never wanted her in danger. William felt sick, bile rising in his throat. This man had been willing to kill dozens of innocent people, tourists, families, children, for money. Had only felt regret when his niece specifically ended up in the danger zone he'd created. That wasn't redemption. That wasn't conscience. That was selective morality, the kind that let people justify any horror as long as it didn't touch the handful of people they decided mattered. Subscribers never miss when everything changes forever. Hit like and subscribe before the next moment. Lucas took a step forward, and all 12 of Garrett's bikers raised weapons. Guns, knives, chains, a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire. Don't, Garrett warned, his voice cracking. I've got friends now. Better friends than you ever were to me. Friends who understand that survival matters more than your outdated code of honor. Tank's voice crackled over the radio, urgent and tense. Boss, we've got a problem. Scorpion colors just pulled up behind us. At least 20 bikes. They're blocking our exit route. We're surrounded. This wasn't just a standoff between brothers anymore. The Scorpions had come to collect their investment, to make sure Garrett followed through, or to eliminate everyone who knew about their involvement. William's heart hammered against his ribs so hard he could feel it in his throat. They were trapped, Garrett's betrayers in front, rival gang members behind, nowhere to run. The warehouse had become a kill box. Lucas's face hardened into something William had never seen before, something ancient and terrible that belonged on battlefield monuments. Last chance, Garrett. Surrender now. Come home, and I'll make sure you survive what comes next. I'll protect you from the Scorpions. We'll figure it out together the way brothers should. Garrett's hand moved to his belt, pulling out a phone with a cracked screen. He pressed something and held it up like a talisman. I'm not surrendering anything. My escape plan is already in motion. In about 30 seconds, I'll be gone with enough money to start over somewhere your reputation doesn't reach. Somewhere the Scorpions can't find me. Mexico, maybe. Or Costa Rica. Somewhere warm where nobody knows my face. Lucas's eyes narrowed dangerously. What did you do, Garrett? What else did you do? The answer came in the form of screeching tires from the direction of the main clubhouse, the sound carrying across the industrial district. William's stomach dropped through the floor. No, not possible. Garrett couldn't have, but the look on Lucas's face said otherwise. The color drained from his skin. I had insurance, Garrett said, his smile cruel and broken. Someone I trust more than these idiots. Someone who's been helping me from the beginning. Someone with access to police resources and evidence manipulation. A white van pulled up to the warehouse entrance with its headlights off, sliding to a stop that kicked up gravel. The side door slid open with a metallic screech. And there, sitting in the passenger seat looking calm and professional as if this was just another Tuesday, was Detective Torres. William's entire world tilted sideways, the ground seeming to shift beneath his feet. Torres was working with Garrett. She'd been in on this from the start, the fake evidence, the convenient arrest timing, the pressure on William to confess, the dismissal of his alibi. She'd manufactured everything. But why? What did a police detective have to gain from helping a biker with gambling debts commit terrorism? Torres stepped out of the van wearing civilian clothes now, dark jeans and a leather jacket, with a gun holstered at her hip and another visible in an ankle holster. She looked relaxed, confident, like someone who'd already won. Sorry about the confusion earlier, kid, she said to William with zero sincerity, her smile sharp as a knife. Had to make it look convincing for the cameras. Nothing personal. Lucas's gun was up instantly, aimed at Torres's chest with rock-steady hands. What the hell is this? You're a cop. You're supposed to uphold the law, not. Torres laughed, cutting him off. I'm a realist. This is me retiring early with a very generous severance package. See, Garrett here isn't the only one who's been embezzling. I've been skimming evidence room cash and drug seizures for 3 years. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger audits. But internal affairs was getting close anyway. They're smarter than they used to be. I needed an exit strategy, something big enough to distract everyone while I disappeared. Garrett needed help framing your homeless hero and creating chaos. We helped each other. Now we're both leaving very rich, and you get to decide what's more important, catching us or saving your daughter." William's blood turned to ice water in his veins. No, they'd left Olivia at the clubhouse with protection. She was safe. Maria was there. 3 armed guards who'd die before letting anyone touch her. But Torres pulled out her own phone, turning the screen toward Lucas with a theatrical flourish. Security camera footage showed the clubhouse main room in grainy black and white. The 3 guards who'd been protecting Olivia were unconscious on the floor, motionless in ways that might mean dead. And Olivia was gone. The room was empty. "She's already with my partner," Torres said casually, like discussing the weather. "We'll let her go once we're safely across the border into Mexico. Probably, if you don't follow us. If you don't alert Border Patrol or the FBI or any of your criminal contacts. Be a good boy, let us disappear, and maybe she comes home in a few days." Garrett moved toward the van, backing away from his brother with his gun still trained on Lucas's chest. His hand shook, but his aim didn't waver. "Don't follow me, Lucas. Accept that you lost. Let me go, and maybe Olivia comes home. Chase me, and you'll never see her again. That's the deal." But before he could reach the van, movement caught William's eye from inside the vehicle. Small movement, desperate movement. The back door burst open from the inside, and Olivia tumbled out onto the gravel, hands zip-tied together but legs free. She'd somehow gotten loose from whoever was guarding her, had fought her way to freedom with the determination William recognized from the bridge. Garrett's expression shifted from confident to panicked in an instant, his careful plan crumbling. He lunged for his niece, and everything erupted into chaos. Gunfire, shouting, bodies moving in all directions as Tank's group rushed in from the back and Reaper's team closed the perimeter. William ran toward Olivia without thinking, his body moving on pure instinct. But Garrett was faster and more desperate. He caught her with brutal efficiency, one arm wrapping around her small chest while his other hand brought a knife to her throat. The same knife he'd probably used to cut steaks at family dinners. "Everyone stop!" Garrett screamed, his voice breaking. The warehouse went silent. Even the gunfire ceased. Olivia whimpered, tears streaming down her face. The knife pressed close enough to her skin that William could see a thin line of red beginning to form. Garrett's eyes were wild, desperate, the eyes of a man who'd lost control of his plan and was grasping at anything to survive. A cornered animal, most dangerous when wounded. His gaze locked onto William with sudden, terrible intensity. "William comes with me," Garrett snarled, pulling Olivia tighter against him. "The kid gets in the van right now, or she dies right here in front of all of you." William didn't hesitate. "I'll go." His voice cut through the silence before anyone else could speak. Lucas's head whipped toward him, eyes wide with disbelief and something that looked like terror. "No, absolutely not. We'll find another way." But William was already stepping forward, hands raised. The knife Lucas had given him dropped to the ground with a clatter that echoed through the warehouse. "There is no other way. Look at him. He's one wrong move from cutting her throat. I go with him, Olivia lives. That's the deal." Garrett's wild eyes focused on William, calculating, suspicious. Smart kid. Smarter than these fools who think they can negotiate with a dead man walking. He pressed the knife harder against Olivia's neck, and she whimpered as another thin line of red appeared. "But how do I know you won't try something heroic the second I let her go?" William kept walking forward slowly, deliberately, his heart hammering so hard he thought everyone could hear it. "Because I've got nothing. No family. No home. No future. You already destroyed whatever life I might have had when you framed me. What's the point of fighting?" The words tasted like poison, but they worked. Garrett's expression shifted to something uglier, satisfaction mixed with contempt. "Get in the van. Now." William climbed into the back of the white van, his legs shaking so badly he nearly fell. The interior smelled like cleaning chemicals and something else, gunpowder maybe. Torres was in the driver's seat, engine already running. Another man William didn't recognize sat in the passenger seat, heavily armed, watching everything with dead eyes. Garrett backed toward the van, still holding Olivia. "Nobody follows us, or I kill the kid and dump his body where you'll never find it. You get Olivia back alive. That's more mercy than you deserve, brother. Lucas looked like he was being torn apart from the inside. Tank stepped forward, whispering urgently, but Lucas shook his head. His eyes locked with William's through the van window, and William saw a promise there. I will find you. I will come for you. Don't give up. Then Garrett shoved Olivia away roughly. She stumbled and fell, and Lucas caught her instantly, wrapping her in his arms as she sobbed. Garrett jumped into the van, slamming the door. Drive, he shouted at Torres. The van peeled out, tires screeching on gravel, and William watched through the back window as the warehouse disappeared into darkness. They drove for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, twisting through Oakland's industrial district toward the port. William's mind raced. He had no plan, no weapon, no backup. He'd just volunteered to be executed by a desperate man who'd already tried to kill his own niece. But the alternative had been watching Olivia die, and William couldn't do that. Wouldn't do that. She was just a kid who'd already been through enough trauma to last a lifetime. The van finally stopped at an abandoned warehouse near the shipping containers, different from the one they'd just left, more isolated, surrounded by rusted metal and silence. Garrett dragged William out roughly, gun pressed to his spine. The man from the passenger seat, Torres's partner, stayed behind to watch the perimeter. Torres followed them inside, flashlight cutting through the darkness to reveal a space that had clearly been prepared in advance. Plastic sheeting covered the floor, tools laid out on a workbench. This was a kill room. Garrett was going to murder him here, dispose of the body, and disappear with Torres into whatever life they'd planned. You know what's funny? Garrett said, forcing William to his knees on the plastic. I actually feel bad about this. You seem like a decent kid. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong face to frame. Then don't do it, William said, hating how his voice shook. You can still walk away from this. Take the money and go. You don't need to kill me. Garrett laughed, but it sounded hollow. I do, actually. You're the loose end. The story only works if you're found dead, apparent suicide from guilt over the bridge collapse. Tragic homeless kid couldn't live with what he'd done. Case closed. Nobody investigates further. Torres checked her watch. We've got maybe 10 minutes before Lucas figures out where we went. Make it quick. But Garrett kept hesitating, the gun wavering. He kept checking his phone obsessively, glancing at something outside the warehouse door. A specific shipping container painted red with Asian characters. William noticed the pattern. 3 times in 2 minutes. Whatever was in that container mattered. Mattered a lot. What's in the container? William asked, stalling for time. Your escape money? Garrett's eyes narrowed. Shut up. But Torres laughed. Oh, he's observant. That's where we've been stashing everything. $2 million in cash from evidence rooms, drug seizures, and club funds. Plus insurance documents, new identities, everything we need to disappear. $2 million. William's mind reeled. This wasn't just about Garrett's gambling debt anymore. This was about Torres using Garrett's desperation to fund her own escape, probably planning to kill him too once they crossed the border and she didn't need him anymore. You're going to kill him too, William said to Garrett, nodding toward Torres. Once you're not useful. You know that, right? Garrett's expression flickered. Doubt, suspicion. Don't listen to him, Torres said sharply. He's trying to save his own skin. But Garrett was looking at Torres differently now, reassessing. People who don't subscribe miss the moment everything changes forever. Hit that like button now. The warehouse doors suddenly exploded inward with a crash that made everyone jump. Lucas and the Hells Angels poured through. They'd tracked the van somehow. Probably GPS William hadn't noticed. But before anyone could move, Torres pulled out a small device from her jacket. A detonator. Nobody moves, she screamed. This whole warehouse is rigged with C4. I press this button, we all die together. William looked around frantically and saw them. Small packages of explosives attached to support columns, wired together in a network that would bring the entire building down. Lucas froze, his gun trained on Torres, but his face showing the calculation of impossible odds. You'd kill yourself too? Torres smiled. If I have to. But I'd prefer we all walk away. You let us leave with William, we drive away, and I'll tell you where the detonator's disarm code is. Everyone lives. The standoff stretched for seconds that felt like hours. William's eyes were drawn back to that red shipping container. Something about it nagged at him. The way Garrett kept looking at it. The way Torres positioned herself between it and the angels. Then William understood. The money wasn't the only thing in that container. There's someone else, William said suddenly. In the container. Someone helping you. Someone with the resources to get military-grade explosives and fake documents and offshore accounts. Garrett's face went pale. Torres's smile vanished. Shut up, she hissed. But Lucas was already moving toward the container. Torres's hand moved toward the detonator, but before she could press it, a voice called out from the container. A voice that made Lucas stop dead in his tracks. Don't do it, Torres. I'm changing the deal. The container door swung open, and a figure stepped out into the flashlight beams. William couldn't see the face clearly yet, but he could see Lucas's reaction, shock, betrayal, and something that looked like grief. No, Lucas whispered. Not you. Please God, not you. The figure stepped fully into the light, and William's breath caught. It was Maria, Lucas's ex-wife, Olivia's mother. The woman who'd been trusted to protect Olivia at the clubhouse. Maria held a gun casually, her expression cold and unfamiliar. Sorry, Lucas, but your brother's debts became my opportunity too. I've been planning this for 2 years. Garrett was just my useful idiot. Torres was insurance. And William? She turned to look at him with eyes that held no warmth. William was the perfect patsy. But now that everyone's here, I can simplify things. Kill you all, take the money, and start fresh with Olivia in a place where you'll never find us. Lucas's gun hand shook. Where is Olivia? What did you do with our daughter? Maria checked her own phone, then smiled. She's safe. For now. In a location only I know. Drugged and secured. She won't remember any of this. And whether she ever sees you again depends on whether you do exactly what I say. Starting with dropping that gun, William's world was spinning. This had never been about Garrett's gambling debt. Maria had orchestrated everything. The bridge collapse, the framing, the betrayal, using her ex-husband's brother as a weapon against him. But before anyone could respond, William's phone buzzed in his pocket. Everyone's attention snapped to the sound. Torres moved toward him. Give me that. Now. William pulled out the cheap prepaid phone slowly. The screen showed a text from an unknown number. His blood ran cold as he read it. Don't trust any of them. Your real family just found you, and we're coming to take you home. Stay alive for 3 more minutes. William stared at the text message, his hands trembling. Your real family just found you. The words made no sense. He was an orphan, had been bounced through foster care since he was 8. He had no family. But before he could process anything, the warehouse's side entrance exploded, not with violence, but with light. Floodlights. Professional tactical lights. And voices shouting, FBI. Everyone on the ground. Agents poured in from 3 directions, wearing vests and carrying assault rifles. Maria's gun clattered to the floor as agents tackled her. Torres tried to run, but Tank caught her, ripping the detonator from her hand. Garrett dropped to his knees, hands behind his head, all fight drained from him. Within seconds, the situation had been neutralized with precision that spoke of long surveillance and careful planning. A woman in an FBI windbreaker approached William, her face kind but professional. William? I'm Special Agent Rodriguez. Sarah Rodriguez. We've been tracking Detective Torres's corruption ring for 8 months. We needed her to lead us to her partners and the money before we moved. William's mind struggled to catch up. You were watching? This whole time. Agent Rodriguez nodded. Since before the bridge collapse. We had Torres under surveillance. When Garrett contacted her with his plan, we saw an opportunity to catch them all. We couldn't intervene earlier without blowing the operation, but we were never going to let you die. She paused, her expression softening. And we found something else during our investigation. Information about you. Lucas was holding up his phone, talking rapidly to someone. His face had transformed from devastation to desperate hope. She's okay? Olivia's okay? He listened, then his knees buckled with relief. Tank caught him. The agents secured her 20 minutes ago, an FBI agent explained. Maria's secured location was a hotel room 6 blocks from the clubhouse. Your daughter is safe, unharmed, already on her way here. The warehouse erupted in cheers from the Hells Angels. Some were crying. Tank was definitely crying. Agent Rodriguez turned back to William. 6 months ago, when you first went missing from your Sacramento foster home, a missing persons case was filed. During Torres's investigation, we ran your prints and DNA from the bridge scene. William, you're not a random orphan. Your real name is William Chun. You were taken from your parents when you were 8 years old during a custody dispute that turned violent. Your father went to prison. Your mother spent years searching for you, but you kept getting moved through the system under different case numbers. She never stopped looking. William felt like the ground had disappeared beneath him. My mother. The words came out broken. Agent Rodriguez pulled out her phone, showing him a picture. A Chinese-American woman with kind eyes and graying hair, holding a photo of a younger William. She's been searching for 6 years. When we found you, we contacted her. She's on a flight from Seattle right now. She'll be here in 3 hours. William couldn't breathe, couldn't process. 6 years of believing he was alone, unwanted, forgotten. And his mother had been searching the entire time. Tears streamed down his face before he could stop them. Lucas crossed the warehouse, still shaking from his own near loss, and pulled William into a hug that felt like being anchored to the earth. You saved my daughter twice, kid. Once from a collapsing bridge, once from my own terrible judgment in who I trusted. I owe you everything. The FBI began processing the scene. Maria, Garrett, Torres, and Torres's partner, all in handcuffs. Maria was screaming about lawyers and rights. Garrett looked hollow, destroyed, like he'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. Torres was silent, calculating even in defeat. The red shipping container was opened, revealing exactly what the FBI hoped to find. $2 million in cash, documents, and enough evidence to dismantle a corruption network that had been operating for years. What happens to them? William asked. Agent Rodriguez's expression hardened. Torres is looking at federal corruption, conspiracy to commit murder, terrorism charges. 25 to life minimum. Maria as the mastermind gets even worse. Garrett as an accomplice might get a plea deal if he cooperates, but he's still facing a decade minimum. They're done. Subscribers never miss the moment lives change forever. Like and subscribe now while you're still here. 3 hours later, the parking lot outside the FBI field office was filled with motorcycles. All 700 Hells Angels who'd witnessed William save Olivia had come. Word had spread throughout the Bay Area about the homeless kid who'd risked everything, who'd been framed and nearly executed, who'd traded himself for a little girl's life. When the car from the airport pulled up and a woman stumbled out crying William's name, the bikers formed 2 lines, an honor guard. William's mother ran to him, and they collided in a hug that felt like coming home after being lost at sea. She was sobbing, touching his face like confirming he was real. My baby. My baby. I never stopped looking. Never stopped. Lucas approached with Olivia holding his hand. The little girl was exhausted, but safe. She saw William and broke free, running to wrap her arms around both him and his mother. This is William, she announced. He's a hero. He saved me twice. William's mother looked at Lucas, then at the sea of leather-clad bikers, then back at her son, clearly trying to understand what her child had been through. Lucas extended his hand. Ma'am, your son is the bravest person I've ever met. He gave my daughter her life back. If you're taking him home to Seattle, we understand. But if you're willing, I'd like to offer something. He pulled out papers from his jacket. Not adoption papers anymore. Something different. Honorary membership in the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. It's never been given to someone his age, but the brothers voted unanimously. He'll always have family here. Protection, support, a place to belong when he needs it. William's mother looked at the papers, at Lucas, at the 700 bikers watching with respect and something like love. He has family. He has me. But, she smiled through tears, he can have more family too. After what you've all done for him, how can I say no? The bikers erupted in cheers. Tank started his engine, then another, then all 700. The sound rolled through the night like thunder, like celebration, like homecoming. William stood between his mother and Lucas, with Olivia hugging his waist, and felt something he hadn't felt in 6 years. Safety, belonging, love. The homeless kid who'd slept under bridges and eaten from dumpsters now had not one family, but two. A mother who'd never stopped searching, and 700 bikers who'd claimed him as their own. Lucas leaned down to William's ear, speaking over the engine roar. "You know what Olivia asked me on the drive here?" William shook his head. "She asked if you could be her brother. Not legally, not on paper, but the kind that matters. The kind that shows up when bridges collapse." William looked at the little girl who'd trusted him when she was terrified, at Lucas who'd believed in him when the evidence said not to, at his mother who'd never given up hope, at the bikers who'd honored a kid who had nothing. "Yeah," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I can do that." As they loaded William's few possessions into his mother's car, there wasn't much, just the clothes on his back and the jacket Lucas had given him. William turned back one more time. The warehouse where he'd nearly died was being processed by FBI agents. The bridge where his life changed was being repaired. But the people who'd transformed him from invisible to unforgettable stood waiting. "Ready to go home, sweetheart?" his mother asked. William looked at her, at the mother who'd searched for 6 years. Then at Lucas and Olivia, at the family who'd chosen him. Then at the 700 bikers, at the brotherhood who'd claimed him. "Yeah," William said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. "I'm ready to go home." The motorcycles followed them to the airport, a processional that stopped traffic and turned heads. When William's mother pulled into departures, the bikers formed up one final time. Lucas stepped forward, handing William a leather jacket. Small, his size, with a patch that read, "Honorary Brother, Hell's Angels, San Francisco Charter. You ever need anything, kid? Day or night, coast to coast, you call." William put on the jacket. It fit perfectly. Olivia was crying as she hugged him goodbye. "You'll come visit, right? You promised to be my brother." William knelt down to her level. "I promised, and I keep my promises. I'll be back in a few weeks once I get settled in Seattle. We can video chat every day until then." As the plane lifted off 2 hours later, William watched San Francisco disappear below him. The Golden Gate Bridge, scene of his greatest terror and his greatest courage, gleamed in the sunset. His mother held his hand, and he held hers back. He'd lost 6 years to a broken system and cruel fate. But he'd gained something more valuable than time. He'd gained the certainty that heroes weren't born in mansions or raised in safety. Heroes were made in moments when scared kids decided someone else's life mattered more than their own fear. And he'd gained families, plural, because blood wasn't the only thing that bound people together. Sometimes it was bridge cables and bravery. Sometimes it was leather jackets and loyalty. Sometimes it was a little girl's hand in yours and a mother's 6-year search. Sometimes family was whoever showed up when everything collapsed and refused to let you fall alone. William was going home. Finally, truly, completely home.